I think it sounds like we're still waiting to see who James Harden is. Last season, you heard people out there, JJ, saying maybe the James Harden of old, like we're not going to see that again.
I was one of those people.
I thought so. I wasn't sure as I was thinking through this. So what do you make then going forward with James Harden if he stays in Philly, and then I guess if he goes elsewhere?
Well, I think James Harden is actually a great fit in Philly. Joel Embiid has never had a pick-and-roll partner like James Harden. Of all the high-volume pick-and-roll duos in the NBA that last year, Joel Embiid and James Harden averaged the most points per possession. It was about league-best offense when they ran a pick-and-roll together. That duo is great. Harden is such a dynamic facilitator and passer. He makes his teammates better. Yes, we may never see the efficient scorer that he was in Houston and at times in Brooklyn in his first season, but he's still an incredible basketball player and extremely valuable. I just don't know that you want to commit a supermax extension to him at this point. I would look to re-sign him, though, on a smaller deal because he is valuable to this Sixers team.
And I guess the question is mentally, is he comfortable with where he is and maybe a slightly different role, I guess? He'll be 33 when the next season begins. So we shall see what James Harden decides.
Got to chop this.
We got to chop it. We got to chop it. For the simple fact, why is Doc Rivers even talking to TMZ? That's crazy to me. But we got to chop it up, George. I got to hear what y'all got to say. Yeah, we got to chop it up.
Go, it's yours.
I mean, James, obviously, James Harden and Daryl Morey got that special relationship we all know about since the Rocket days, as far as, Daryl Morey, blessing James Harden with his first, Supermax deal, $100+ million, multiple times as a Rockets. So it's not a surprise. Here's the thing that I'm interested in seeing. How much money is James Harden actually going to get, and how much is he going to leave on the table to leave room for the organization to make the roster better so he can accomplish his ultimate goal of winning the championship?
I think Doc is doing the complete opposite of what he did last year. He said a few things that were taken the wrong way with Ben Simmons, and so the storm had started in Philly. So I think he definitely wants to avoid anything that's even close to leaning towards negativity. So he's saying, hey, we're going to do this. We love James. But like Perk said, it'll be interesting. Obviously, we're players. We have a small amount of time to accumulate as much money as we possibly can. And James is on the table for a super max. But as we've spoken on this show several times, there is a way where he can possibly leave some money on the table for them to afford another star player. So like Perk said, James has accomplished everything an individual in the NBA can personally obtain, from scoring titles to MVPs to records. The only thing missing on his resume at this point is the championship. So we'll see, does Philly or does James decide to take all the money that he's deserving of and can possibly get, or will he leave some money on the table for the team to have some flexibility to bring in another star?
Very interesting point. We got a player here talking about taking less money. I think, my saying is never take less from a billionaire. But I think in this situation, I think he'll consider doing all he can to kind of make that team whole, understanding that he forced his way out of Brooklyn. He thought it was a better situation in Philly, playing alongside Embiid, who arguably could have won MVP this season. So I think looking at the roster construction, looking at where he's at in his career, how he plays now, he's more of a facilitator, gets into the lane, likes to create for others. He definitely is going to want some players around him that kind of complement his strength, which is to be more on the ball. So I think that what Doc is saying is basically like, look, we're happy with James. We like his game. We want him to be here long term. And I'm not ruffling anybody's feathers. I'm not going to say anything that can be misconstrued. I've been down this road before, and you know how TMZ is. They'll switch up the headlines on you in a minute. So he made sure he was very clear, concise, and got out of there and said no more questions.
Let's keep it real. I mean, although James isn't putting up the monster numbers we're accustomed to, he's still a 20-10 guy.
Easy 20 and 10.
He's still a 20 and 10, and he can drop 50 on any given night. So it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do out there.
It's an ugly-ass 20 and 10.
Stephen A., you came just in time.
Yeah.
We were just about to talk about the Sixers and what's next for them and James Harden. What do you make of that?
First of all, a couple of things. Number one, James Harden was so bad, so horrible last night, it almost looked intentional. Let's think about that for a second. We're talking about a guy that went 3 consecutive years averaging over 30. 5 consecutive years averaging at least 29 points. 8 or 9 years averaging at least 27 points per game. This is one of the most prolific scorers in the game. He knows what I'm talking about here. How do you go from that to not attempting but 2 shots in the second half of a closeout game? In your sleep, we're not talking about making. We're not talking about makes or miss. We're talking about attempts. What scorer do you know in NBA history that can't get more than 2 shots up in a closeout playoff game in the second half? He played 22 minutes and 52 seconds. Me personally, I've always had a lot of love for James Harden. He'll probably be ticked off at me. He knows this about me. I don't give a damn. I'm going to tell what it is in terms of what we see. This ain't about your personal life. This ain't about what's going on behind closed doors. But this is about the game of basketball that you put on display in front of millions of people watching on television and thousands of people in attendance. That's what this is about. There is no way in hell that you can't get off more than 2 shots. Why was that happening? I'm telling you why it's happening. Because after the game, he's asked about Doc Rivers and he gives no comment. I don't think he wants Doc Rivers as the coach. I think we've been hearing a whole bunch of stuff about Mike D'Antoni for a reason, because he's always lurking in the background. Every single job that he has had is always a D'Antoni sighting somewhere. And then all of a sudden, there's a multitude of jobs that he might not even be considered for, but he'll get an interview, or he'll get 2 interviews, or he'll get 3 interviews, and then he ends up with the job that he really, really wanted. Phoenix, Houston, New York, LA, and I suspect that Daryl Morey and James Harden wants D'Antoni in Philadelphia. And so for me, I don't know what happened. I'm not going to be, such a skeptic to the point where I'm talking about this is going on all season or whatever. But I'm saying last night's performance seemed so deliberate. That's what should be alarming. You go out there and you score 11 points and you just have a bad game and you shoot 4 for 19. Hell, you can shoot 4 for 30. It's a bad game. But when you attempt 2 shots, I'm sorry. That's just too conspicuous to ignore.
But let me push back on your theory. With the performance he had yesterday, does he have the kind of influence or say or control in the Sixers organization to be able to make something like that happen?
Well, that depends. If it's Mike Rubin and if it's Josh Harris, the majority owner, and all of those boys, perhaps not. But if they have decided that Daryl Morey is really the man in control of basketball operations, well, we know Harden's relationship with Daryl Morey. We know Mike D'Antoni's relationship with Daryl Morey. And we heard James Harden be asked, when you are the one that went out there, plays were called for you, you didn't shoot. Plays weren't called for you, but you had the ball in your hands as the point guard. It's a closeout game against Miami. Jimmy Butler's putting on a show. Joel Embiid's got a cracked bone in his face and a jacked up thumb. Tyrese Maxey with his young self is out there hustling and playing his heart out. And the ball is in your hands and you don't attempt but 1 shot each quarter, spanning 22 minutes and 52 seconds. Again, even though the ball was in your hands. Well, guess what? You Daryl Morey, that's your guy. So, and also remember this, and both, especially Stat knows this. GMs love to look right and love to look good. When you make a move like Daryl Morey made, you know it's on you. So you're going to exhaust every means and every measure to make yourself look good by making sure James Harden looks good. It's in your best interest to ensure that he looks good. So if James Harden is struggling out there and James Harden for some reason feels like he needs a new voice, what's Daryl Morey going to do? And remember, Doc Rivers arrived before Daryl Morey. He didn't hire Daryl Morey. He didn't hire Doc Rivers. He inherited Doc Rivers. Every executive wants their own guy. All I'm trying to say to you is this. This is logic. You see the movie iRobot? My logic is undeniable. My logic is undeniable. It is what it is. I mean, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't a damn mongoose. That's what it is. It's a duck. I mean, we can see. There ain't nobody blind. That's what we're talking about here. So I don't know. I'm not proclaiming to know. It's not like I've had people call me and say, that's what happened. I'm telling you, I watched the game last night. Right here in this studio. Me, Greedy, Jalen Rose, we chilling, watching the game. And we saw what unfolded. And last time I checked, none of us are blind. Not one of us. I might wear glasses to read from time to time, but I ain't blind. I know what I saw. And what I saw was a guy that didn't take more than 2 shots, not a guy that couldn't take more than 2 shots.